Help! How do I get this needle pattern onto my knitting loom? How do I convert, Kristen? Well, I'm glad you asked. That is a great question, and we get it a lot here at GoodKnit Kisses, and you see it all over the web. How do I convert a needle knit pattern to loom knitting? And I'll tell you, it's pretty simple, but sometimes it's not so simple. So let's convert one today. Welcome to GoodKnit Kisses. We're all about helping you stitch your love and love your stitches. So how do I convert, Kristen? Just get right down to it. All right, I'm going to tell you that I'm going to talk to you as a friend today. First, I'm going to say, click on the link in the description below to go to the blog and get more information. Second, we also have in there a chart that shows you some converting, and it's a very quick chart that shows you how to flip those stitches, and you'll know what I mean later on. But that's your first freebie in this video, is to know that we have a conversion chart that's ready and waiting for you. It's actually already been there on the blog. So if you found it before, it's there, and it's still there, and it's not going away. We also have interactive calculators. If you ever don't know the link, just type interactive calculators and GoodKnit Kisses and you'll find it. And there's things like how many stitches to cast on, how many rows, and how much yarn am I going to use. Now, I'm really happy with Leisure Arts. They have been so gracious to be able to let us teach from some of their books. And the book we're going to teach from today is a specific pattern called the Winter Lace Afghan. Now, I've already taught this on needles. We had a part 1 where I show you exactly how to read the needle knit pattern. So you're going to want to go to that for more information on just reading the pattern, just like it's a needle pattern. The part 2 is actually working it on the needles. You don't need that, okay? But the part 1 is really good to watch, so I encourage you to do that. This video is going to address it just like you are a loom knitter who wants to know how to convert. At the very end of the video, I'm going to do a couple of little stitches to show you what those particular stitches are, but I'm not going to cover all the rows. This is just going to be information on how to convert, but I will tell you, if you want to make the Winter Lace Afghan for loom knitting, then you're going to want to click on our link to the blog and you'll be able to get that pattern as well. Ultra close-up warning. Don't get the pattern yet for the lacy Afghan. No, don't do it. Remember, you came here to convert, right? Okay, you are going to need a pattern book, specifically this one, The Beginner's Guide to Lace Knitting. Now, you can download it or you can just follow along. I'm going to show the whole thing. However, if you do like how this is written, it is a good idea to go ahead and get the book, because then you can convert the other patterns in there and you'll have all of them to yourself and you'll know how their patterns are written. Okay, so let's get into this. So we're going to go through this reading from left to right. That is exactly how you need to do it on any pattern you pick up to convert. Reading everything. I know it sounds silly, but you really do need to do that. So we're going to start with the skill level here. You get a basic idea if you think you can work it. A beginner or an easy, of course, are these first 1 or 2 little levels here. If you get something that says easy plus, it's going to be similar to this pattern here as well. It assumes you know how to do some basic increases and decreases, and of course your basic knit stitches and how to cast on and bind off. Those simple things there. Now the size is approximate, and of course it shows that, but depending upon your tension, how tight or loose that you hold it, plus the changing of a needle to a peg, and if you change that yarn, you're going to get a slightly different size here. More on that later. For the materials, the main 2 materials you're going to want to look at is what yarn is being used, specifically what weight of yarn, and the size of the knitting needles. Now, these are a 29-inch size 11 8mm circular knitting needles. So the circular needle tells you on an Afghan that you're going to be using quite a lot of stitches. Okay, so 29 inches isn't a really big size, and of course the size of the blanket is going to give you that indication as well. So you're going to also look at the materials here where it says the super bulky 6-weight yarn. You know that you're going to get some pretty good size stitches there. So a loom should be able to accommodate that. But we will talk about later converting this over and using a 4-weight yarn or a 5-weight yarn. So we'll talk a little bit about that. In fact, the conversion that I did, actually we tested it with a 6-weight yarn and with a 4. So let's move down to gauge. Gauge is determined with the size or gauge of the needle and the size or gauge of the yarn put together with the main stitch pattern. Here it calls out 8 stitches in 4 inches in lace pattern. So that's this lace pattern that you read on later on. So once you make that lace pattern in this yarn and this needle, the gauge is the size of the stitches in that. So 8 divided by 4 is actually 2 stitches per inch in width across. So roughly, if you take 2 stitches in 46 inches across, you actually are going to need twice that many stitches to get 46. Now that's approximate because the main lace pattern is the middle, but then you've got some seed stitches on the side, so it changes just slightly. All right, so next in the pattern is the stitch guide, and this might be abbreviations in another pattern. You can get a better idea of everything you need by continuing to read the rest of the pattern, but here it's going to call out special stitches that you may or may not have used before. This one calls out 2 different stitches. One is slip slip knit, which is a left leaning decrease going from 2 stitches down to 1. So it's the opposite as a K2 tog or knit 2 together, which leans to the right. So that will go through that, and we'll go over some of these stitches later on in the video. This next one is an SK2P. It is a center decrease going from 3 stitches down to 1 stitch. You slip a stitch, then you knit 2 together, and then you pass that slip stitch over the knit 2 together to make 3 go down to 1 stitch. So again, we'll do that later. Here next they call out pattern stitches. So pattern stitches is, the first one is a seed stitch, and then it moves on to the next page for the lace pattern, and then it doesn't have any more pattern instructions, but then it goes to instructions here. So the stitch patterns are these 2. The first one is the seed stitch, and you notice it says over odd number of stitches. So that's just talking about the seed stitch portion is going to be worked over an odd number of stitches. Now the rest of the pattern is going to be for stitch specific information. So when we go over to lace pattern, that's going to change, and then you'll have an overall amount of stitches worked as well. Row 1, it says knit 1, purl 1, repeat from asterisk across to last stitch, and knit 1. On needles, that first row 1 is either going to be wrong side or right side. Typically, the first row is the right side, but it may not necessarily be that way, and you need to find that. So act like this is a scavenger hunt, and you're looking for something that says right side. It doesn't say that anywhere on this page, but it will in a moment. But let's just continue on before skipping ahead. Row 2, it says knit the purl stitches and purl the knit stitches. And then it says repeat row 2 for seed stitch pattern. Well, on a loom, we know that we don't do that. So let me give you a little bit of visual. So if I'm working my sample on a needle, let's say this sample is coming off of a needle, okay? I'm going to take this right here, this row, and I'm going to work it onto my empty needle. The way needle knitting is, it works all these stitches, and as I go, it moves it over here. Well, when I'm done and I'm out of these stitches and it's all over here, I can't work it anymore until I flip it over. And then I have to work on the wrong side of the fabric. So in order to get a knit stitch to appear on the other side, I have to make a purl stitch on this side. I'm working the opposite stitch. Okay, so a knit is a purl and a purl is a knit. So where I had a knit stitch on this side, it puts a purl stitch on the back side. So when I come to a purl on the back, I want to knit that so a purl appears on the wrong side. See how these stitches are opposite here? That has like this bumpiness. I'm going to show you another sample. So here's another sample here. You can see how the bumps for the purl stitch are they're offset. You can see right here. So we have a purl in a row and a knit and a purl, and then it's opposite on the next row up. So you flip the stitches over. So it's not actually saying wrong side or right side just yet, but know that the row 2 is going to be opposite, or this one is. We don't know which one yet. So let's keep going. Move over to the next page. So the lace pattern over here says multiple of 12 stitches plus 1. Well, in the parentheses, that other part down there had a note about it being an odd number of stitches. Well, 12 plus 1 is odd, but the main stitch pattern or lace pattern is 12 stitches over however many repeats there are plus a 1. Okay, so that's how you get your stitch pattern to work out. And I'll show you the chart down below in a moment on how that works. But if we keep reading, it says row 1, right side. Right side is in parentheses. So now we know that the odd rows are going to always be on the right side of our knitting. So we know that in looms, let me get my loom, I'll show you. On a loom, what comes out that we see is the right side. It's always the right side on a knitting loom. And on the inside of the loom, or the back, that's the reverse. That is the wrong side. So I can see all these purl bumps on the back, and on the front I see the knit stitches. So we know that whenever it says a wrong side row, which when I go down to number 2, it's going to say that, number 2 in all wrong side row, when we see a wrong side row, we're going to do the opposite stitch to make it appear correct on the right side. Let's skip this part right here just for a moment and run over to the chart. The chart is really, really awesome if you get one of these in a pattern and you are a loom knitter. You're going to love the chart because you could knit straight from this chart. Now you still want to look at your other notes though, because this is just a repeated stitch pattern here. This is not all stitches across on your row. So let's notice this right here. First of all, we see a nice chart with a big red inked box around it. Okay, notice this big column here. There's nothing here. It's one stitch, right? This is the plus 1 that we had way up here. 12 stitches plus 1. So you see right down here at the bottom, let's follow all the way down until we see a number 1. There's the 1. This is where we start row 1. If we look over here and look to the left, or if we go right to left, this is how the knitting needles work. And if we get our row to go from right to left, it will be knit up exactly how these rows are on here. And down at the bottom, you see the 12 stitch repeat. Okay, it's got little brackets showing that everything within the red part is 12 stitches. So this is your repeat. So once you work these 12 stitches, you make another repeat and ignore this one here. So you would just start at the beginning part of this right here. You see this circle here? You would look up in the key and do what the circle says. In this case, it's a yarn over. So I know that stitch, that's a yarn over. The next one, we look at this little slant here. See how it leans and slants to the left? Okay, you come up here and you see that there's one that leans and slants to the left, and that is a slip, slip, knit. That's that left leaning decrease. If we continue across, we'll see all these blank boxes. All the blank boxes or empty boxes, it says on the key, look at this. Now we start talking about right side and wrong side again. It says knit on right side, so all the empty boxes are knit, and purl on wrong side. Okay, let's come down here. So we have empty boxes, and then look, when we go all the way down to the end, there's a 2. So we just jump up to the next row, and all the way across are empty boxes. Those are all knits. If you remember in the directions, it says that we have to purl, except we as loom knitters don't do what the written direction is. We need to do the opposite. So we knit across. So translated, come down here, you see, ta-da, it is already showing what you need to do. Okay? Once you complete that full knit row, you go to row 3. Same thing. You work across, you work all these stitches, all 13 of these, and then when you get to that 13th stitch, you repeat that section for the lace, and you go all the way back to the red and then repeat to here, okay? And just keep working it. All right, let's look at this other stitch while I'm still down here. This one looks like kind of a T sideways. It's leaning to the right, right? Let's go look at the key. Leaning to the right is a knit two together. That's that right leaning decrease. So we've got most of the stitches covered here. I'll cover that last one that you don't know yet a little bit later, but that's that slip one, knit two together, PSSO, okay, SK2P. And it looks like this. It looks like a little left-leaning decrease here, but it's not really. It's just a different looking stitch, but it actually is right here in the middle, okay? It actually is a nice center decrease. So this is our knitting down here. It shows actually where these knits come together, okay, to form these X shapes, and then when they're all put together end on end, they look like these big diamond shapes, and that's how they start kind of increasing and decreasing this way, and then they go back out again, and they come together at these points. So those are the SK2P, okay? All right, let's move back over to the lace pattern. So you notice that the row 2 and all wrong side rows are purl across, and you just knit across. The rest of them are all right side, so you're just going to work those exactly how they say here. So really, you know, all you need to know as long as you've done it on the loom before. If you're not familiar with that term, you can always, of course, look it up. I'm going to show you how to do those particular stitches in this video here, but really you've got all the knowledge that you need if you know these, and there's no converting to that. It would just be more just trying to get the knowledge base in your head to learn how to do this stitch, but it doesn't mean you actually have to convert. If you need to do these stitches opposite, let's say these were written and they said that these were the wrong side rows, then you would need something to help you convert that. And I'll show you real quick what I have on my website that you can see. It's a free chart, and it says Stitch Conversion Chart Equivalents. And so if you run into something that says that you're on the wrong side row and you see something that says purl, then you come over to what do you do on the right side? Well, we knit. So on the loom, we're going to knit that stitch. If we see the knit, then we're going to purl. If we see PTBL, we purl in the back. This one is knit in the back. So this is actually an E-wrap. So this first knit stitch, this is actually a true knit stitch, or you can do a flat knit or a U-wrap. Usually the U-wrap knit or the true knit stitch is what you would do on the loom for the knit. And the E-wrap is actually this KTBL, knit in the back loop. Okay, so they're actually not used as much on needles. Just want to cover that real quick. And then all these stitches down, these are basic stitches, but we can move on. Here's some cross or twist stitches. These are cable stitches, and if you keep going, and some of them are labeled a little bit differently, but they'll have explanations of how to make the stitch. And then here's the decreases. So if I come to P2 tog, that's purl 2 together, the opposite would be what? The knit 2 together. This over here, purl 2 together through the back loop, that's actually going to be a slip 1, knit 1, PSSO, or you can work an SSK. So this one is a decrease just like the SSK. The knit 2 together on the wrong side is a purl 2 together on the right side. So you see how you just do the opposite one. The SK2P is written on here as the slip 1, knit 2 together, pass the slip stitch over. That we actually would normally work. You can work it on either side, but the opposite is written over here. So on the right side, you would work it as a purl. On the decrease, where you see P2 tog, PSSO, on the right side, you would do actually what we're going to do in the video here, which is slip 1, knit 2 together, PSSO. But that's getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but I just want you to know that there is that stitch conversion chart if you need it, and it's there for you. All right, so there is one thing on here that I really want to point out, and it has to do with the lace pattern repeat on row 19. It's slightly different in this little part that bumps out here. You can see it when it's spelled out on row 19. It's actually asking you to work between the asterisks until the last 12 stitches. Now, when it's talking about that, it's talking about just the lace pattern here. It's not talking about the seed stitch that falls before and after. So after you've repeated everything up until the last 12 stitches before a stitch marker, if you have one placed to separate the seed stitches, then you actually work the pattern slightly different right here. And instead of working the yarn over SSK twice towards the end of the row, you actually work it 3 times, and you don't work an SK2P yarn over. So it's been drawing the stitches in just like down here. You're doing it up here. It just draws it in at the other end of the diamond, except on that last one, we want it finished off with a nice knit stitch on the end. You can see that there's 3 yarn over SSK. So there's 1 set, 2 sets, and 3 sets, and then it finishes off with a knit stitch. Let's see what it looks like on a sample here. So in these 2 parts of the samples, you can see how this one has a nice finished clean knit stitch along the edge here, a knit stitch over here. It frames out this really nicely. If you look to this side, you can see how it has a nice long knit stitch here, but this looks just a little bit different on this side. If I pull it up a little closer, you can see how there is a yarn over just kind of laying here. It's really loose. That's because it's getting it set up for another repeat. So what we do is we make the change where we only do 2 stitches with the yarn overs, and then we make a knit stitch here instead of letting it just kind of hang out. Okay. So instead of closing it off as if this part would, so where we've got 3 stitches going down to 1 with yarn overs on either side, this long stitch here is repeated up here. You see that? So it's just a cleaner look to do it this way. If you miss it on yours, it's okay. It's just that it's going to have that extra long piece hanging out. Now moving on, it says cast on 95 stitches. This number will change for your knitting loom. So if you want to try this and work with the same yarn and the loom that you think is going to work the best, you can. It's just that you're going to need a loom that has 95 stitches. If you don't have a loom in the right gauge that has 95 stitches, then you can make a change. So you don't have to feel like you can't do it. You can actually change the yarn. Let's say the pattern is working with a 4-weight yarn and it needed 170 stitches, and you said, well, I don't have a loom that size. You can change it to where the stitches are bigger and bulkier with like a super bulky, and then have something that has enough stitches to accommodate. So I'm going to cover that in a moment. I just want to read through the rest of the pattern, and then we'll talk about converting this part of the pattern. Okay, so then this says work rows 1 through 5 in seed stitch, which is this part here, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, that way, all the way across, and you work 5 rows, okay? It's just that, remember, the opposite is happening on your even rows, and you'll do that on here, okay? So on your even rows, you're going to start off with purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, okay? Then on row 6, it says work seed stitch as established over the first 5 stitches. And then you purl to the last 5 stitches. So what are we going to do? We're going to do just like what we do on row 2 over here. We're going to knit across. So we won't purl, we're going to knit across. All right, because remember, this is an even row. And then you work the seed stitches at the end of the row. So what's going to happen in this one is, because it's an even row, we're going to actually purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. That's for 5. Then you're going to knit across to the last 5 stitches and then do that again. Purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. So you end with a purl. All right. Then on row 7, it's actually, right here, is actually the same as row 1 over here. It says, keeping first and last 5 stitches in seed stitch, work row 1 of lace pattern over 85 stitches. So it's saying that I have 5 stitches on one side. Let's look at the sample. I have 5 stitches here, and then I have the lace in the middle, and then I have 5 stitches here. Now, this sample obviously isn't the Afghan. This sample is actually just 2 stitch repeats wide. Okay, I just want to get it in something that you can really tell what this is. So you're going to work it casting on, you work your 5 rows, then you're making actually this setup row. This is like right at the edge here, and then you start working your rows going from the seed stitch to this lace pattern and then to the seed stitch again, and you just continue that repeat as we talked about on the chart. And then when you're ready to finish and you complete all the way to row 20, because the stitch pattern is actually 1 through 20, then you work more seed stitch and then bind off. And that's really the main part of this pattern. And of course, you can get the converted pattern in the link below, but I want you to see how you can make a change. So Kristen, what do I do if I want to find out what loom to use? Okay, the first thing is I look at the size of the knitting needles. And I have a chart that's going to help you. So I'm going to grab my chart. I've got a version of this on our website. This is from a workbook that I have to help you organize, but this is the version of this chart is on our site. I'm going to go down to the needle size area, and I'm going to look until I see the size 11 needle. I see it fit in this category here that says 10 to 13 on the US size, or 6 to 9 millimeter. Well, I have an 11, and it's 8 millimeter. Okay, that's really good. I'm actually going to go across now. I'm going to see what yarn weight it recommends. Let's look at that. Oh, it recommends a 5 to 6 weight yarn. Well, we're using a 6. And let's go all the way over. And it says average stitches per inch. That's 2 to 3 stitches per inch. Well, it says that there's 8 stitches and 4 inches on this one, which is 2 stitches per inch. So we're good. So let's find out what loom we can use. Let's run our finger all the way back over. This calls for a large gauge loom, which is 5/8 or 11/16. So that's going to be the closest loom that we have. Then we want to look at what looms that we have that are 5/8. If we don't have any, we want to get one, and we can find out if we want to make this pattern without any changes. Then we would make it like if we want to use a number 6 yarn. So if we want to use this yarn here, a super bulky 6-weight yarn, then we would find a knitting loom that would accommodate that. Okay, so this is right here is a 5/8 gauge loom. If you don't know what gauge is, you'll go visit our website and you can see the gauge charts, and we'll give you that link so you can see more about that. But that's the spacing from center peg to center peg. Okay, we're expressing it in fractions and inches. So 5/8 is 5/8 of an inch to center peg to center peg. I actually kind of line up one side of this groove to the same side on the next groove of the next peg, and that helps me when I put my measuring tape up against that. So this one right here, though, it only has 48 stitches. It certainly doesn't have the 96 stitches that are called out in the pattern, right? So I'm going to need to find a loom that's going to accommodate that, all right? So let's say I find that, or I want to test it first before I buy it. Maybe I have this one in my stash, and I want to see what does it look like. Well, I can knit up a sample, all right? It's a really good idea to grab the yarn, or at least the size of the yarn that it calls for in the pattern, and work it on a loom that you have. That's a great way to begin. What I did is I worked up 5 stitches across on both sides. So I have 10 stitches, so 5 and 5, plus 1 full stitch pattern in the middle. Okay, so that is going to be the 13 stitches over here. Okay, remember when we talked about the lace pattern having a multiple of 12 stitches plus 1? So I've got 12 plus 1 plus the 5 of the border, and then the other 5 of the borders. So I cast on and I start kind of working through this entire pattern. And then I got this, and then I made another stitch repeat. And then this middle section right here is what I can measure across, this little part that has all that stockinette. It was actually the easiest for me to measure. And when I measured across, I actually got 2.75 stitches per inch. That was just out of the range for the loom gauge that I had. Remember I said 2 to 3 stitches per inch? I would need to make my peg spacing bigger to match, and I just don't have the XLG loom with enough pegs to match. Or I could use a thinner yarn to fix it. Okay, see how tight these stitches are? See how you can't really see through it as much as you could with the loom, with the needle version? The needle version, I could see through it more. I had this really lacy look, and this one just doesn't do it for me. I didn't like it as much. So I decided that I wanted to test it on another yarn. So this one looks really lacy. I really like this one. This one is a number 4, okay? So I just did the same thing. I made me a sample that had the same amount of stitches and worked it up. Now I made sure to take it off of the loom because of course it was really spread out. I took it off the loom and tested it, and I even measured across to see how many stitches I got. Well, mine is just shy of 4 stitches. Okay, it's just shy of 4 stitches per inch on mine. So once I have that information, I can actually use a calculator to help me figure out what I need. Now, if you don't know how to do the calculations, we've actually made it easier for you. We actually have a free interactive calculator on our website. And when you scroll down, you can actually go to the cast on calculator, and it helps determine the number of stitches that you need to cast on. You put in your width in inches that you measured across. So if you measured across 1 inch or 2 inches, you would put that number. And then, of course, you count your stitches, and then you put in how many stitches you got. I actually measured across in 2 inches because I thought that was easier to measure. So I had 2 inches across that I measured, and I got a number of stitches. I actually got 7.5. So I got 7.5 stitches. And then the project width, I needed 46. Okay, so 46 inches across is what I needed. So it says that my number of stitches to cast on is 172.5. So I can do a couple of things with that. I can say, do I want to go back to the other yarn, or do I want to get a loom that's going to accommodate this? Okay, so if I want to do a loom that accommodates this, then what I need to do is make a change and figure out how many stitches I need to get this to work with all these multiples that they mention in here. I know that I need an odd number of stitches because it said so in the seed stitch here, and I know that my cast on was 95 stitches over here. The main thing I need to know is that I've got 5 stitches on either side for the border, so that's 10, and then I need all these stitches in the middle here for the lace pattern, and I need 12 plus 1. So I can take my 172 and a calculator. Let's go in here and find my calculator. Let's do it really big for you. So I can take my 172, and I'm going to take out 10 stitches for that border. Okay, that's 162. Now I want to take out my plus 1, minus 1. I have 161 stitches that I need to see about this multiple of 12. So I'm going to divide 161 by 12, and I get 13.4167 blah, blah, blah. So I can actually get 13 pattern repeats on here. Okay, so I'm just going to clear that out, and we're going to say 13 times 12. So it's 13 repeats times the 12 stitches in the repeat equals 156. We're going to add our plus 1. Okay, that's 157 plus our 5 stitches for each border. So that's 5 plus 5 is 167. So I know in order to make it on this yarn here, I need to cast on 167 stitches onto my pegs. So now I need a loom that's 5/8, and it will accommodate this many stitches. So that's how I did this pattern. So on my Loom Knit version, you can see that I've got 167 stitches to cast on. Now I'm using the chain cast on. You can use the long tail as well, but I want to point out that it is going in one direction on the cast on so that you can begin your stitches how they are on the chart. I've got the chart here in my own version, but you can see how on the needle chart, how it starts your peg 1 from right to left. So you need to put your slip knot on the left and work to the right in order to get your peg 1 set up for success and follow that chart much easier. And then you're not having to remember which way you've got to go, flip back and forth. So we've got the rows that we need for the stitch pattern. So what about how many rows that we need to get the length that we want? Well, we've got written in here that we are continuing the lace pattern for 8 repeats, rows 1 through 20 to get that stitch repeat. So you're going to need more than that to do the smaller, thinner yarn. You're going to need more repeats than 8. In order to figure that out, let's flip over to the other side here. We know that our rows are 1 through 20 in the lace pattern, right? So we go to our gauge here and we see that there's 13 rows in 4 inches in this one, but on our swatch that we make, let's just use my pattern for an example. On my swatch that I made in that smaller yarn and measured, it's 10 rows in 2 inches. Okay, well that's 5 rows in 1 inch. So we're just going to take 20 rows divided by 5. Okay, so we have 20 rows in our pattern. So we're going to say divided by 5, which is 4. So there's 4 inches to make up one lace pattern. All right. So the length that we want in our pattern is 54 inches. When we go over to the needle pattern, you see that we want 54 inches. So we take 54 divided by 4. That gives us 13.5. That tells me that I want 13 repeats long of this stitch pattern. Okay, so if I just take an even 13, I know it's an odd number, but a rounded number to 13 times 4 inches, that's 52 inches. Well, we also have the beginning and the end rows here. I'm just going to kind of fast forward to how many stitches we have in the rows, and I've already estimated that I'm going to do in my pattern. I actually have a setup of 7 rows of seed stitch and 1 row of the setup row before you get into the lace pattern, and then I have 6 of the seed border. I have rows 1 and 2, and then I repeat that twice more. So that's actually 6 rows plus the 8 rows. So that's 14 rows. Okay, and that's just determined from the sample that I had done before. And so we're going to say we have 14 rows, and our stitch guide, our gauge is telling us that there's 5 stitches per inch. So we're going to say divided by 5. So that's 2.8 inches. Okay, so I add the 2.8 inches to my 52 that we got before with all those lace repeats equals 54.8. So my blanket is going to be about 55 and a half or 54 and a half or 55 inches. So that is what is determined there. And then I've already determined yarn and all that based upon some other things. And if you want more information, you can go on the interactive calculator video and know how much yarn to determine. So we're not going to go over that in the video. But that is how I got this pattern converted, and you can do that too with other needle patterns. So I want to encourage you to continue in the video. I'm going to show you how to do some of these special stitches, but I think that you have all you need to know for that. Pause your video and grab your tools if you want to work through these stitches together, or save this video for later. All right, let's do this. We're going to work through a knit 2 together, a right leaning decrease. We're going to do a slip slip knit, which is a left leaning decrease. We'll work a yarn over, And we'll also work the slip 1 knit 2 together PSSL, which is also called the SK2P. All right, so grab your supplies and let's begin. We're going to work the yarn over SSK. That's the first set of stitches that you may not know in this pattern. We're going to work with this right stitch and the left stitch. We're going to make a left leaning decrease, working 2 stitches together and making them slant to the left. First, we're going to move the stitches over and make an empty peg. So I'm going to actually take the right stitch and put it on the left stitch. And when it gets knit, it will lean to the left. We have an empty peg. We want to make a yarn over here. There's 2 different ways we can do it. One is yarning over and E-wrapping around, which gives it a little bit more yarn and it twists the stitch. It will behave a little bit differently than a yarn over that is just in front. So you can put one just in front. It will be a little bit shorter. The way I've done it in this video and this pattern is actually wrapping over this way. So we're going to do that today. Then you just take the yarn and wrap it around the front of this next peg and make a U-knit stitch here and knit both of these together, lifting them up and over that stitch. And now you've just slip slip knit, or SSK. The next set of stitches I want to work are these 2. We're going to work these 2 together, but we're going to make them lean to the right. We're also going to yarn over, except the yarn over is going to come after the stitch is worked instead of before, like on the SSK. We're going to take the left stitch and put it on the right, and that will make it lean to the right for this decrease. So we actually knit this stitch first and knit both of those over and then yarn over. Okay, now what if it's too tight? So let's take this one off. Okay, we can actually, if we start moving all of our stitches over in advance, sometimes it's a little bit crowded, right? If I want to make a knit 2 together and it's just, I just can't pick this stitch up and move it to the right because there's just not enough slack, or maybe I did my stitches too tight, I can actually work this first stitch first. I can knit that one, pick it up, and move it onto the stitch that I'm going towards. Okay, so it still makes it lean to the right. So I'm going to knit that all the way over. I'm not wrapping it again. And now I've got that empty peg to make my yarn over. And now I just keep moving on with my pattern. All right, so when we come back, I'm going to show you how to make that center decrease, whether it's in the middle here or it's on this side over here. It's the same method. All right. All right, we're going to work the center decrease, working 3 stitches down to 1 stitch. In this case, we're going to be placing yarn overs on either side. So I'm going to show you how to work it if it's tight. It's actually working a slip stitch where we're slipping or leaving this peg alone and making the yarn just go in the back. So we just ignore this stitch for now. We're going to be working these 2 stitches in a right leaning decrease, a knit 2 together. So we'll be picking up the left stitch and moving it to the right. But if it's too tight, we can do just like we've done in a tight case for the knit 2 together, and we actually are going to work that second stitch. But remember, you're slipping the very first stitch first. So I have got my yarn skipping all the way behind 2 of these pegs. So I'm going to knit the left stitch of these 2, put it on the right stitch, okay, and then knit that over. Now I have some slack, okay, and this is moved in the right spot, but we still have this slip stitch to pass over. This is a slip 1, knit 2 together, and pass the slip stitch over, and that's passing it over these. So if I pick this up, I can do one of 2 things. I can pick this up and take the slip stitch and move it over and then replace it and knit off like this, up and over. Or I could have put this one, the knit 2 together, on top of the slip stitch and knit it over there too. So I'm just going to knit this off, knit it over, lifting up and over. So we're not actually wrapping it with the knit stitch. Then if you look in the back, you're going to see this long piece here. So this is the extra yarn that's left over from all that. you're going to want to use this as a yarn over. So bring it forward on your peg if you're holding it in front, or you want to twist it if you're using the E-wrap method. So I'm going to go in between these two pegs here and twist it. And that makes my yarn over. And then I'm going to work the next stitch just by wrapping around and making yarn over that way. And we successfully decreased down to 1, and then we've got 2 increased stitches on either side of that. And that's going to make this stitch here with the yarn over on the left and right. All right, so a couple of more things before we wrap up. Working in the round on needles is the same as working in the round on the knitting loom. Your gauge still may be different. The stitch names might be slightly different. You might have to look up a little bit of information on a certain cast on or bind off, or a stitch may be called one thing that maybe is not on the loom. However, you're not having to convert or flip any stitches because everything on both of those is on the right side. So working in the round, even if the pattern works in the round for a little bit and then it goes to flat panel knitting and then it works in the round again, all the round stuff is correct. So if it does start changing to a flat panel for a short period of time, you will have to flip those wrong side rows. Now, I know that in this pattern there weren't many wrong side rows that we have to flip. We weren't having to flip that many stitches, like meaning do the opposite stitch. However, this should really help you sink your teeth into converting a pattern, because I think most of the time it's a matter of figuring out your gauge, making that gauge swatch, and understanding that you can change the loom and you can change the yarn. You can do this, and making those wrong side rows. Many patterns, those wrong side rows are a lot of times are as simple as what we just did here. So I encourage you to find those patterns and start getting used to working in that knit stitch language, because you're going to open up a huge library of information for you. You can start getting those knit stitch books and dive in and getting more brave. I want you to stitch your love and love your stitches. Don't be afraid to try something new. I hope you have a great day, and happy loom knitting and needle knitting into your loom. Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us today, where we help you stitch your love and love your stitches. See you again soon.